Welcome to the No Ideas Original Podcast featuring Mr. Rob and Shannon, episode 164. What's up, Rob? I see you dressed for a special occasion.
Listen, man, this is a good time. It's a good time for some good topics, man. Some good conversation with our sister we're about to bring on. And yes, I dressed for the occasion. So you see the shirt, you can imagine. You see the hat, you can imagine even more. So what this conversation is going to be about. But I'm looking forward to some good information today, bro.
Yeah, we was talking behind the scenes stuff, and I was saying that this is something that you talked about having her on for quite a long period of time, and we finally got around to making it happen. Why do you think that it's important for us to have this conversation?
It's widespread because cannabis is has been the illuming paraphernalia that is it a class A, class B, and all of the stringent laws around it, and then all of a sudden it dropped, and now it feels like we can drink alcohol now. It almost feels like prohibition because now there are pop-up shops and there are dispensaries and there are states legalizing it, and I think we have it's close to half of the country now that are legalizing it now.
Yeah.
I think there's some things that people should know from the medicinal standpoint versus the recreational. And like she said this in the background, not to differentiate the two because we're a small community, but I feel in my personal experience of recreational and medical, I think the medical has just a little bit more of a cleaner, I say, taste or an effect. Not that recreational is just some garbage or something like that. But I just find it when I'm going to the dispensary or going to medical dispensary, the care, the compassion, the knowledge, what they leave you with when you live out of there, it's like, damn, nah, I just ain't buy a bag of weed. I came in here and got some knowledge. I know what a sativa is. I know what an indica is. I know what cannabinoids are. You know what I'm saying? And how those affect the body, because all these things are either mind altering or body altering, so to speak. So
yeah,
I think it's just something because everyone's smoking weed, pretty much. Not everyone, but it's become so popular now that people should know what they're doing. You know what I mean? And not be so much of the indulger, but also know what you're smoking, bro. Pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like the dispensary was like extremely important at the height of the pandemic. And I know when you was going through everything with your kidney also, because I remember you used to make the dispensary rum and then come over to my crib.
Yeah, and I tell you something too, man. When I first lost my kidney, my mother asked the nurse at the dispensary. She said, he's going through all these things. He's taking these meds. It has him lethargic. It has him a little nauseous. Can he smoke his weed? And the nurse said, have him smoke two for me. I was like, what? Hold on, son, I can smoke still? So that's when the journey started. So when the second kidney happened and my wife asked about it, and, they wanted to know, their concern was, it reaching to the kidney, the new kidney, and how that would affect the meds and all that. So that's when I reached out to Uzma to find out, is it okay if I can do it? So on and so forth. They're just concerned, with the edibles, and will that take from the anti-rejectional meds, or will it increase it? Whatever the case, because they don't want the kidney to reject. We just don't want, me smoking cannabis to affect any of the meds. And I think she'll explain that too.
So without further ado, let's bring our guest for this evening on. Uzma Zakir, medical cannabis pharmacist. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Hi, Shannon. Assalamu alaikum, Rob.
Assalamu alaikum. Salam. How you feeling, man? You look good.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. Thanks. I'm excited about being here.
As you should.
So tell us a little bit about the dispensary and what made you decide to become a pharmacist.
Okay, so I'm a traditionally trained pharmacist. So I actually went to St. John's University in Queens.
How's that? Red Man.
Yeah, that's right. Now we're the Red Storm, but yeah, you
right.
And
I just showed you how old I am when I said
and so I worked in traditional pharmacy for a long time, and I just really took a step back and noticed that I didn't really see a lot of people getting better. It was really kind of perpetuating this cycle. where you have someone come in for like their first prescription, then 2 or 3 months later, they're getting another prescription that's really dealing with the side effect of the first one.
Right.
And people are so misinformed. And I felt what has happened with Western medicine is that all the power is taken from the individual, right? So there's no, and Rob can relate to this, I think, with his incredible story about his kidney, is that we do have a personal responsibility and we do have personal power when it comes to taking control of our own health. And I feel like with Western medicine, that's really been taken away, that it's just like you're completely reliant on a surgery or a prescription. But there is another way to heal and to feel wellness.
Right.
And when Connecticut did something really interesting, and that they made their medical marijuana program a pharmaceutical model. So you have all traditionally trained pharmacists who, whether it's on the job training or if they've learned taking courses beforehand,
Okay.
learn about cannabis as medicine and then learn about it. Really, with me, it was the experience with the patients, with my coworkers, with my mentors, and then doing research. And 5, 6 years ago, there wasn't as much available as there is now. So that's
Right.
we're talking about watching documentaries or videos on YouTube or really just basic stuff that nothing was very official. And then staying close to patients and following them up and trying new things out. And then seeing these outcomes, right, which are so phenomenal. We just see miracles every day and people getting off of their prescription painkillers or their prescription medications, people who don't need their walkers or their canes every day. It's really, it became like people would repeatedly just say, thank you for giving me my life back. And then taking it a couple of steps further, like with my own journey using cannabis as medicine for PTSD, is combining that with self-care practices or maybe your spiritual journey, your mindfulness and your consciousness to become more present and aware of your own health, your own power, and then how that affects every part of your life, whether it's how productive you are at work or how much quality there is in your relationships. So really using cannabis as a part of healing all different aspects of your life and awakening that power within you.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about something you said. We had Dr. Wade on, and she's a traditionally trained pharmacist also, and she sort of said the same thing that you said in terms of her working in pharmaceuticals and seeing for years that people came in and it was just renewing a prescription, refilling a prescription, and there was really not any change. Like I wonder, and like how many people actually have that epiphany and say like, okay, there has to be some other way. Maybe we should look at holistic healing or medicinal marijuana or whatever it is, versus how many people that just stick with the traditional model of, you know what, I'm a pharmacist. This is what it is. I'm just going with that.
Yeah, you have to seek it out, right? So it's this is the type of knowledge that you have to seek. It's not taught to us, in school. They're not teaching cannabis as medicine or endocannabinoid systems yet in any colleges. So it's really kind of being aware of the having the epiphany and then finding that opportunity and then going after it. So that's why I feel like in Connecticut, it was really lucky for me that they did adopt this pharmaceutical model. I felt like I was kind of in the right profession.
Right. Are you finding that there are more pharmacists moving over from Western medicine into cannabis medicinally?
I would say there's a fair amount. I guess it's limited with how many job opportunities there actually are, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. You know what's crazy is there's so much a stigma around cannabis, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, and the stigmas baffle me because the plant is so damn resourceful. I mean,
Yeah.
as the brothers in the 5% say in the 12 jewels, part of the 12 jewels is food, clothing, and shelter.
Yeah, look at that. You get everything right from cannabis.
You get everything from one plant. Food. If you watch Bong Appetit, they mix chicken with marijuana. Yeah. Like it's all in there. The clothing, of course, shelter and fuel. It baffles me why they put so much of a stigma. They call cannabis the nature's medicine. Explain that to us.
Yeah, I guess depending on your perspective, it's either the devil's lettuce or it's nature's medicine, right?
Right. You know what I'm saying?
Devil's lettuce.
I mean, yeah, it's a sacred natural plant, right? And and we believe in the Quran and in the Bible, right? It says that God has given us a cure for every malady, right? So we believing that and taking what we know, and how many thousands of years this has been used for exactly what you just said, for medicine or for fibers and for textiles. And that propaganda, the stigma, is because of that incredible marketing campaign that they had, a couple of decades ago, with convincing all of us of how bad it was. And when marijuana was made illegal, the Marijuana Tax Act, I think it was 1937, the American Medical Association actually was in opposition to them making marijuana illegal. So cannabis oils was in the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, which is like the official list of like medicinal products and herbs. It was in everyone's medicinal cabinets.
That's right.
And so it was just to make way for synthetic and chemical pharmaceuticals. And unfortunately, it was successful for a long time, but the people have taken it back. To a certain extent. It's still messy, but yeah.
It's messy, but I think you do see now, like I see more pop-up shops, like CBD, different types of CBD products and things like that.
Yeah.
What do you think has led to the shift where people have gone back to embracing CBD products?
So first, just the fact that it was made more accessible, so people had it to access, were able to access it and then learn more about it. And I think that people are getting tired of, we get more and more people that are coming in saying, I would say, okay, let me put it this way. A few years ago, a lot of our patients would come in and say, I've tried every medication, nothing is working. I never thought I would try marijuana, but here I am. Now what I'm seeing more of is, before my doctor puts me on all these medications, I want to try this first. So that's pretty incredible, right? Like people, so the message is getting out there to a certain extent.
Right.
But then with the CBD, I think it was in 2018 with the Farm Bill, they allowed for like hemp and CBD to be grown into cross state lines, and that's where you started seeing a lot of CBD products.
Right.
So, like what CBD? So we can talk a little bit about like the difference between THC and CBD. They're both cannabinoids from the plant, which means that they're the molecular components that come from the plant that actually fit into our body's cannabinoid receptors or interact with our cannabinoid receptors to create physiological change, right? So THC is the most prominent. There's over 100 cannabinoids, and THC is actually the only one to make us high or get that medicated feeling. CBD, naturally occurring, is the second most prominent chemical component to the plant. It's a very different mechanism of action in the body than THC. And I think this is really interesting. And this is THC will only interact with your cannabinoid 1 and 2 receptors, but CBD will actually interact with like over 60 molecular targets in human physiology. Yeah. So that combination is so special, right? And when you think about it, like from what I've heard, like back in the 60s and 70s, weed was like maybe 6% THC, but it was also 6 to 10% CBD and 6 to 7% CBG. So you weren't necessarily getting that high that you get nowadays from it, but it was still like a really nice sense of wellness. I mean, I'd love to see it kind of move back to that. So CBD, because it's not psychoactive, just for legal reasons, it became more accessible. It's a very potent anti-inflammatory. It does a lot of really great things for the body. And that's why we've seen so much of it.
Right.
So I had a question. So is CBD more helpful to the body
than THC? I mean, I would say that they would be like individual specific, maybe based on the condition, the patient's tolerance. I do feel, so in my experience, I'll say that patients who use all THC really get to the point where like kind of plateaus. Patients who use all CBD, they'll have a lot of improvement and will kind of plateau. It's really that combination of cannabinoids that I think you get the best outcome.
So we're using these acronyms, right? And I understand there's also a THCA.
There is a THCA. So actually, before you light your flower, there's actually not really any THC in there. It's THCA. It's the acid. Yeah, until you burn it, that combustion sparks it and causes that chemical reaction. And the THC, the A kind of falls off, right? You can say it becomes THC and it becomes psychoactive. So the THCA doesn't really cross the blood-brain barrier.
Right.
And then you can have THCA products with a cold extraction from the plant, so so it doesn't convert to THC. So you can get a lot of medicinal benefit from THCA as well.
And the
THC cold products, what does that look like?
like a cold extraction. So they don't let anything get hot because it's the temperature that'll convert that THCA to THC.
Wow. And the proteins in the THC, that's where it attaches itself to the blood, and that's how you get the effect, the cycle effect, and all that.
So think about it like a lock and key. So our receptors, for example, like in our central
we have cannabinoids in us.
Yeah, we have cannabinoids in us. We have our naturally circulating endogenous cannabinoids. So our body really makes its own versions of compounds like THC and CBD naturally. All of us, our pets too, most mammals. And so what they discovered, they discovered first these receptors, and you can think of them like locks all over our central nervous system, our immune system, and other parts of our body. And then our natural cannabinoids, as well as the cannabinoids that come from the plant, are like the key. Right, that kind of unlock it, and then they basically stop a physiological cascade, so that can look like an inflammatory response, right? So you're supposed to have inflammation in response to an injury. It's when it goes on for too long that it becomes troublesome. So our natural cannabinoids are involved in keeping that inflammation down, and then when you supplement with cannabinoids from the plant, you're achieving that as well. So you've got the receptors, you've got our natural cannabinoids, a couple of other parts, and they named this the endocannabinoid signaling system. So just like we all have a cardiovascular system, we have an endocannabinoid system.
Who knew that?
Who knew that, right?
Can you talk to us a little bit about the benefits in terms of mentally and emotionally?
Yeah, I think that's what has moved me so much over the years is when patients come back, or even their caregivers or their partners come back, and they'll say, oh my gosh, I got my husband back after 20 years. His pain is finally relieved, right? Relationships start becoming, there's more quality to them. Even a lot of younger guys that, come in after a rough couple of years maybe. And, and that's, when you were bringing up that whole recreational idea, maybe they would look to some people who are, who are a little judgy that these look like recreational users, right? But you see them, trying to do their best for their health, right? Maybe coming off of some of, the medications that a lot of teenagers are put on nowadays. Could be like Ritalin, the Prozacs and stuff, trying to safely come off of those. Yeah, they're using marijuana. It's a good choice after considering what they've been through. They tried the traditional route. But then after a year or so, sometimes 6 months, a year, they'll tell me, hey, I was able to go back to class. I started another class. Oh my gosh, I got a job. I actually was able to go on a job interview and I got the job. And over these years, because, you just start seeing them thrive. So it's not just older people who've been in pain for 20 years. It's all of us. It's, it's the housewife, it's the young mothers, it's the grandparents as well. And that emotional well-being, right, is what I think the challenge for a lot of us is that most people, what I've noticed is that our minds never stop, right? So our minds are constantly going, and we're having anxiety over things in life that are not life or death, right? Like we're not sitting by a cave and thinking and there's a lion outside. We're like just trying to get our kids to their activities on time, right? And making sure dinner is ready. So I like to focus on those small moments with patients and trying to time their medication to what they're feeling and what they need to do that day or that evening, so they can have more fulfilling relationships. Because life is really that accumulation of those small moments. If you go on vacation once a year, that's great, but that's not the whole year. So we want to have value for these small moments. And then so helping people come and being aware that this can help you come to a point of stillness. And then perhaps you do have a spiritual practice. Maybe you do meditate, or, you try to do all of these things that help it, that you see on ads or something, right? That they help so many people. Why don't they help me? We just can't get to that point of stillness, whether it's flashbacks from a traumatic event, whether it's chronic pain. I've worked with so many patients with chronic illness or chronic pain, and it's like they almost have PTSD from having a chronic illness in Western healthcare. And right, so it's like they start to hate parts of themselves. They start to hate parts of their bodies. And Rob, you've been through a lot. I don't know if you can attest to any of this, the frustration. It's a
big thing, because I know every time I go to they always ask me, are you safe at home? Do you feel like killing yourself? I'm like, all right. But I understand why, because, post-surgery, you dealing with all these doctors, these white coats, you you kind of get a little like uncomfortable by seeing them and they asking you questions. They never fully explain it unless you ask them the question.
Mm-hmm.
So thank God I do my little research with some of the meds that I take. And I ask them, yo, why you giving me this drug? You know it's gonna mess up my memory, bro. Why you doing it?
Mm-hmm.
You read what I read, so don't blame me.
Yeah.
And they look at me like, Mr. Browder, you know what you're talking about. You damn right. I got to put this in my body.
Mm-hmm.
So my biggest concern, like I was telling Shannon, when I lost my kidney the first time, one of the questions my mother did ask the nurse at the dialysis center was, could he still smoke his weed? Because his appetite was off. I was really nauseous. Couldn't get used to the meds, none of that. And lo and behold, the nurse told my mother, tell him to take 2 pulls for me. And that was it. That sold me, and I was in. So moving forward, when it happened again, I wanted to be sure because they were saying, now we got edibles and all these different things. Will it interfere with my anti-rejectional medication?
Yeah. I remember that conversation.
And that's when you came in. I'm like, yo, I need to
Mm-hmm.
smoke, but I just don't want to mess myself up again. And you explained that to me, and you explaining it now makes it even more profound, because knowing the endocannabinoid system as it is, and then what we have in us, when those receptors meet, in my mind, I'm thinking that it opens up and unlocks something for you to feel as though now I can endure, or I can take in these challenges that once gave me anxiety, gave me PTSD, had me worrying and figuring out how am I going to get it done. Now I'm more relaxed and I'm more in a controlled mindset without all of the distractions and the anxiety around me. And I'm in more settled time. I told Shot before we started this, when we first started this podcast, I used to smoke before we started. Just to level me out.
Yeah, just to get rid of the the little bit of nerves.
Just a little bit. That's all.
But you're absolutely right. Like what you're describing is being present, right? So when you think about when you use cannabis, you have that, you're feeling that high or medicated feeling. Really, you're not thinking about the past and you're not thinking about the future. You become very present. And right. And that's what Buddhists say is the secret to happiness, is living in the present moment. And when we just talking about this now, right, it's going to make all of us and everyone who's listening a little bit more aware next time they use. And then that's going to help increase their consciousness. Then you're going to remember that, hey, I can feel like this. Worry pretends to be necessary. We think we have to worry to get things done. We think we have to worry so we can do the best that we can. I'm totally guilty of this. It's something I've been working on. And then using cannabis, and it doesn't just have to be THC. It could be a mix of CBD and THC, or the right dose of CBD and the timing of it, to get to that point where you can be like, okay, everything is like popping off right now, but I'm okay. I got this. So then we're not snapping at our loved ones. We're not panicking. We're not putting ourselves in chronic stress and chronic fight or flight. And so then combining that awareness, I think, is really important.
Yeah. What do you think about what do you think about the use of cannabis for people who suffer with insomnia?
Well, it's extremely effective. So I think it's definitely a win-win, and I recommend it all the time. I think that's probably one of the most common symptoms that, regardless of someone's diagnosis, their age, or their anything, it really comes down to we're all having a lot of trouble sleeping. So it's definitely very, very effective. I also find that, if you're go, go, go all day, it's still not a magic wand that, you just use something at night, you're going to get a great night's sleep. It's a good idea to maybe use a little less of something in the evening, start to get your central nervous system calmed down a little bit.
So could you break down or separate the three: indica, hybrid, and sativa?
Yeah. So indica, hybrid, and sativa generally is a classification for different types of the plant. So indicas generally come from, like, where I'm from, Pakistan, right? That whole area. They're traditionally that's just where they naturally come from. And the indicas tend to be, you feel it more in your body, and it tends to be restful. And then sativas, which naturally come from maybe Jamaica, for example, makes you feel a little bit upbeat. You feel it in your head. It's more of a cerebral effect. And hybrids are a little bit of both. You feel it in head and body. But honestly, there's been so much crossbreeding over the last few decades that there's very few true indicas or true sativas. Almost everything is a hybrid. So we really try to pay attention. Like I try to pay attention to the entourage effect. So you take the strain, which will always have its essence to the particular, flower that you're about to sell. So the strain has a strong essence to it, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And I think we mentioned a little bit the percentages of like THC and how much it's changed. You get something that's like a high 30% THC versus something that's maybe 16 or 17%. That's going to play a big part in how that particular harvest is going to make it hit. And then the terpenes, which are the aromatic parts of the plant. All plants have terpenes in them, and cannabis is no different. And it has terpenes in it that can really, when we get those measured, it can tell you how euphoric or uplifting something's going to be, or if it's going to be really nice and heavy on the body, and it's good for pain and sleep. It's really looking at all those three things, understanding what you're looking for. So it's a great way to choose. Because remember back in the day, if somebody had weed, like you didn't ask what it was. It was just, we didn't ask.
One day you lazy as hell, and next day you want to run a marathon or something, man.
Yeah, you never know what you're gonna get, and we were fine with it. We were always happy about it, right? Whatever it was, we were happy. But now we want to know exactly what everything is.
I call myself an abuser. Now I'm officially a user now. Because as a teenager, I abused it. I didn't know what I was smoking. I was just doing it because my friends were doing it. And I remember when I first got to compassionate care at that time, I forgot the gentleman's name, how he sat me down with the tinctures and concentrates. I said, this is weed college. What's going on? This man about the drug. And we sat there for about 30 minutes. And I had questions like, I've been doing this wrong all my damn life, yo. Listen. But I'm so happy that was there when it was there, because at a time, like I said, dealing with my kidney and all that, I was missing it and I was going through it. I had just moved from Maryland, come up here, and then I'm dealing with the health stuff. And it was a torture for a little while. And the guys were around.
Yeah, remember CCC? God bless Angela. Yeah.
And I love that place, man. And I'm so happy that most of y'all transitioned over to the Botanist. A few left. Shout out to Jen, my sweetheart Jen. She was a gem.
Yeah, she is a gem.
But, that place was a beautiful place, man.
Right, it was really a special magic there.
Special place. It was a real special place.
Yeah.
Can you run us through?
So Young said cannabis has changed a lot these days. The laboratory weed is not as good or as effective as true strains. I only want indica. Thoughts on that?
I don't know what he means by laboratory weed. I don't think I know what laboratory weed is.
Probably what you said. There's so many mixed indicas and sativas.
Yeah, well, it's not done in the lab. It's the same way any gardener, would crossbreed any type of a plant or seed. So it's not like, I wouldn't say that it's like a laboratory or synthetic in any way.
But if he only wants indica, he only wants the body effect. He likes to lay down.
Yeah, or some of us that are go all the time, just the indicas make us, can make some of us
kind of level us off.
Even. Exactly.
Yeah, level us off.
Yeah, Rob, you had a question?
Yeah. How large is the cannabis community in Connecticut, and where do you see it evolving? Where is its evolution in your mind?
Well, with adult use launching this year, and quite a few dispensaries and more cultivation facilities opening up, and I think Connecticut's really unique in that we do have a lot of really great minds in all different parts of the industry. That are really coming together and doing podcasts and posting on social media and doing talks and setting up talks themselves to really educate as many people as we can, because we're all so passionate that cannabis can help so many people. We just don't want to keep watching people suffer. So I feel like it's only going to grow. It's only going to grow. So right now I think there's maybe 46 or 47,000, just under 50,000 medical patients in the state, which is quite low. And then with adult use, there's always people who are using cannabis. And so now we're seeing it right here in Connecticut. It seems a lot of people have been going to Massachusetts. And so, yeah. And then there's other types of, other markets. So I feel like it's just going to grow. It's going to be pretty expansive.
Tell me something about that symposium you went to at UConn. What little nuggets did you get from that event?
Yeah. Okay. That's great. So what's exciting also when you're talking about cannabis in Connecticut is that some of the state universities are really embracing the research behind cannabis, whether it's horticulture, like how to grow the plant in the best way, or the science behind it. So Eastern Connecticut did an event in October, and I was fortunate enough to participate in. And then UConn did a cannabis symposium in March. And I spoke on the industry panel, but I attended a lot of the seminars where you have a lot of a lot of professors doing research right at UConn or even at Eastern on what these cannabinoids are doing inside the body. So their physiological response, what they're capable of, and how it's working, right? So we look at the mechanism of action of how this is working in the body. So I thought it's pretty amazing to see all these great minds focusing on cannabis. They're also doing research on, actually using it and how people respond and react to it. I find that my challenge has always been as a practitioner that the studies are great and they give me a tremendous amount of insight. But actually having a patient in front of you and finding the right dose and really working out a program for them as an individual, there's not much guidance on that. Right. So
is that because is that because there's so many hybrids where one is sativa dominant, one is indica dominant, and you just don't know how to differentiate?
Well, that's always going to change, right? Because it depends on the harvest. So absolutely. But what I like to do, because you can't rely on like a consistency of a specific type of flower and the terpenes. And remember when I talked to you about the drug interaction, I said, if you smoke it, you're actually going to be better off than doing the edibles, because then you're going to get higher doses. It's going to get processed through your liver. It's going to interact with the drug. But when you smoke it, it's just in and out. So that was an advantage for you. But sometimes if we're looking to treat disease, if patients are looking to come off of prescription medications, just getting that little bit in and out isn't going to be enough. So that's where I'll use the oral solutions, like you were saying that you learned about, the tablets or the capsules. So something I can measure in milligrams and know it's going to have that effect. Those products tend to be consistent, right? Rather than the flower or the vape. So then using that more often.
Do you believe that legalizing recreational marijuana has impacted the medicinal marijuana industry in any way?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because then people feel like they can just, they don't have to kind of put those extra steps and the extra cost in, right, to get your card. And so I think that more people are aware of it because, everyone's been talking about adult use in Connecticut, but at the same time, a lot of patients have been considering like not renewing their card or, just waiting for rec. But the taxes are really high. The adult use, and Rob, you may have noticed the adult use menu is much smaller than the medical menu. So in 2 weeks for my monthly webinar, I'm going to be talking about the differences between the medical program, the adult use program, and the benefits of really understanding exactly like what I'm telling you now, what makes cannabis medicine and what we can do for you. Really understanding the potential to healing. So it's not just, about like getting a good night's sleep or getting in the zone. You can do so much more with it.
And what is the process for getting a card?
So the process is there's about 38 qualifying conditions in Connecticut, 18 and over, and there is a smaller list for pediatric use. But for 18 and over, there's about 38 qualifying conditions. Chronic pain is one of the most recent additions. So that's pain from any source for over 6 months. And PTSD is the only mental health diagnosis on there. And then you can speak to a provider or your doctor. So any doctor, APRN, can certify a patient for medical marijuana. They just have to make an account in the state's database. They'll certify you, which gives you 12-month access to a dispensary. And then you have to complete a registration process, which is really uploading your photo ID, your proof of residency to the state, and then they email you. So just through your email, they'll send you your medical marijuana card. Then you can come to the medical dispensary and sit down with a pharmacist like myself, and I'll review your goals, your medication list, your past usage, your history, what delivery systems you feel comfortable using. I mean, we have people who say like, I never want to get high, right? Like just, I don't, it could be like past trauma. It could be so many different things. And then we say, okay, no problem. We'll take care of them. So that's really the process.
So you said PTSD. Why? I wonder why they don't have just like generalized anxiety.
Yeah. So Connecticut, it's a pretty strict program. So I think that they kind of felt like that was too broad and too vague.
Because everybody suffers from anxiety, but everybody should be able to benefit.
Yeah, and then everybody should be able to benefit. Yeah, it's right. You see, it's like it makes a little sense, and then let's take two steps back.
We all watched the 9/11. We all got PTSD. Damn it. We all sort of. You know what product always baffled me? The topical and sublingual. What you call it? Sublingual products.
Sublinguals. Yeah. So sublingual is anything that you use, you absorb through your mouth. So I think that's such a great way to medicate, because when people like do an edible, right, we all have, it's really hard to metabolize and digest and absorb cannabinoids. So a lot of people will be like, oh my gosh, my edible tolerance is so high. It's like 200 milligrams. I don't feel a thing. And it's really that you're probably not breaking it down and absorbing it. And so I like to skip that step and just use the sublingual absorption. So have a patient like hold it in their gum line, whether it's a spray or it's an oil, because you're almost guaranteed it's going to absorb. And then you don't have to keep trying higher doses. So it keeps your costs down. And then I'll know quicker if it's effective or not for a patient. So that's how the sublinguals work. They absorb from the capillaries in your mouth into your bloodstream. And then the topicals, I mean, our skin cells have cannabinoid receptors in a couple of layers. And so it plays an important part for that. So it's not just, for dry skin. You've got your pain receptors on there. It's also good for how your cell like turnover rate, like how your cells grow and make more cells. So it's involved with that. So the endocannabinoid system is pretty phenomenal it's almost like what doesn't it do for our bodies? It's almost involved in every physiological function. And it's really about just maintaining balance.
And you know what's crazy? Because I've heard it say cannabis helps. It's a shout out to the women with hot flashes.
Yeah, really great for menopausal symptoms, great for PMS pain, also for mood. And it's actually really the endocannabinoid system. It's a hormone regulator. So it's almost like everything that they taught that they were using like the propaganda for, it's like the opposite is true, right? So it balances our hormones. It helps us create new brain cells. Like literally everything word for word is opposite, like classic gaslighting.
So Young said in legal states, they have multiple suppliers. One of those suppliers are government growers. But I did have a question as it relates to that. I guess at the dispensary, because Rob frequents the dispensary. I haven't been to the dispensary, but are the growers actually people at the dispensary, or people can contract with the dispensary and become a grower? Like, how does that work?
So there's been 4 growers in Connecticut since they started the program. So this year you'll see a whole bunch more, and next year you'll see a whole bunch more, but they're just private businesses that, worked it out the way they do, got their licenses and were able to set up.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we carry, it's just like any business, right? Like, you carry the best products that your patients and your customers are going to look for.
Okay.
So it's not really like a private contract or anything.
But I'm sure there's probably a certain amount of growers allowed per state.
I think it's like by state, yeah, because the licenses are limited, right? Because like the plant isn't free. We're not really free to do what we want with the plant. They are setting up systems state by state that everyone kind of has to play this game to get involved in it, right? It's not just like, hey, I'm going to grow this plant and start my own business. It's going to be great. It's a million things for you to even get your foot in the door.
Yeah. Really? Because I want to grow. I guess I got to go through a million things.
You can grow at home, Rob. Did you start growing yet?
I did actually. If I could, I wish I could take you outside. I started. Hold on, let me see if I can.
How's your plant looking, Rob?
I done transplanted my stuff outside now. So
yeah, it's time.
I had them germinating in the house, but now they outside. I built a little greenhouse outside. So I have.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
how's it looking? How's it coming on?
It's coming. I'm struggling a little bit, but it's coming. I'm still working out the kinks and learning what I'm doing, man. So,
there's really something beautiful about growing your own medicine, and it's really a relationship where the plant is gonna intuitively pick up on your needs and probably really grow to be more of what you need just naturally.
Right.
And that's going to be pretty beautiful.
How about that?
What are your thoughts on all these? I go down to New York City And when I go in New York City, I see like all these pop-up shops, and I even see like mobile, there's vans and stuff outside where everybody's selling all kind of cannabis products now, just like out in the open. And I don't even know what
It's legal.
yeah, but it's just strange to me. Like now it's just out in the open, it's so embraced, and it is what it is. But I'm just with you being a trained professional and a pharmacist, what is your opinion when you see stuff like that?
So a couple of things. I think that I'm still like you in shock that you can just do it. You know, it's like, what? Like you can just why all of a sudden this is all okay? We had so many problems for it for so
Right.
many years, and now just like that, like what you were saying, now it's just, I mean, it wasn't just like that, right? But you go from Connecticut, you go to the city and you're looking around and you're like, when did this happen?
The idea of it, they're everywhere. I mean,
Yeah, and they're everywhere now. So it's like one extreme to the other. It didn't feel very gradual, maybe. I think that, you're not really, I mean, I don't know if they're growing it. I don't know where they're getting it from. I don't really know much about the pop-up shops out there, but it's the same way over the past couple of years. People were selling CBD at gas stations, right? And there's probably no CBD in there, or even the CBD, like, vitamins at some of these health food stores, there's no CBD in there. So quality is always a concern, right? Like you want to have some quality control. If it says it's THC, you want it to be all THC. You don't want it to be anything else or get fooled. And then someone has a bad experience and they're turned off from this beautiful plant forever.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what you don't want, because that can easily
Yeah.
happen. And if you go into these hole in the wall spots that you see everyone else out there, you're like, oh, I'm gonna give me some weed. You come out, you don't want to do that, man. You fool yourself, and you be tripping out here, walking around with a bucket on your head, looking stupid.
Yeah.
That's one of my biggest concerns, though, is that like
The
with
effect
now, like people just that the openness around it, I think is beautiful, but I'm fearful like the government's involvement around the regulation with it, and just the guy who was selling it out of their house, now all of a sudden I got a pop-up shop, and I feel like it may compromise, and definitely have a larger impact and change things. Like I'm happy that folks have embraced now the use of marijuana more openly. I'm happy that people aren't getting,
locked up.
Locked up or bust out at work over it. To that part, but I wonder though. I wonder like
athletes are getting fined.
Yeah. They took that, a lot of the drug testing programs, they took it out. But I just wonder like what's kind of like what's the end game in particular from like the government's standpoint. Like why are they so open with this?
Right, this is my thought. And just hear me out. It's going to be, in my opinion, just like alcohol.
I feel that. I believe that.
You see alcohol in every store, from Budweiser to Coors Light to Hennessy. At one time, all that was underground. For 100 years, marijuana has been underground. All of a sudden, it hits the surface. You got pop-up shops. You got dispensaries from Colorado to Massachusetts. It's going to happen just like marijuana. They be selling cigarettes in the bodega soon, bro.
I can see that happening.
I just feel that whole scenario of what took place in the 1920s with alcohol, that's the same exact thing is going to happen with marijuana. But more inclusively, like I said, the benefits of it, bro. You can make bricks out of hemp. You don't have to smoke it. There was a company, I think I said this before, there was a company down in Louisiana during Hurricane Katrina that was rebuilding homes. But a lot of them homes, when they were torn down and decimated, they had no way, because it's so hot in Louisiana. So there was a company who offered their services with having hemp bricks build homes for specific homes in Louisiana. Reason why the hemp bricks that they were building absorbed the heat, so it kept it cool inside the house. Means that you didn't have to have an electric bill. You didn't have to have any of that AC and all that stuff. You know what I mean? And they were building homes with that. So I'm like, hold on, I can smoke it, I can make clothes out of it, and I can build with it. That's the whole food, clothing, and shelter thing. That's where I see it going further, not just so much as being next to Newports.
I'm fearful of that, though. The Newport.
The sustainability factor is going to be amazing, right? The fact that, if the resource is used properly, it can really help with so much of the pollution and the other problems that our planet is dealing with. I think also what's going to happen in the future is that these pharmaceutical companies are going to come out with their own compounds working on the endocannabinoid system. So, that's when they're going to start teaching it in pharmacy school and in medical schools and nursing schools. And that's going to be like a pretty big wave, I think, is pharmaceuticals, not necessarily a copy of CBD or THC, but something that's going to work on our endocannabinoid system.
Yeah. My fear though is with capitalization, once capitalization gets involved, it changes. And when it finds its way into the store, or Philip Morris, before you know it, something like, oh, the marijuana on the shelf next to Newports, but it's $30 for whatever it is. Like, I just think capitalization ruins everything. And then you lose sight of the medicinal benefits and everything else, and it just becomes about the dollar.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's the crazy part, because when it comes about the dollar, people ain't listening to no knowledge. They ain't listening to what you got to say. They just want to make money.
Yeah. And that's our job. That's why we're doing what we're doing, right? So people can make educated and informed choices.
Look into it. And don't be abusers. Be a smart user. So tell us about the Recovery Network programs and how you became a board member.
Yeah, so I was actually a patient recommended me to be on the board. So it's been a couple of years now, and they have some really great centers in Bridgeport where they help women, they help people that are struggling with mental health disorders, maybe need a place to stay for a little bit and need some intervention or some counseling, and then some medication assisted treatment centers. And what they did, I thought what I was most excited about is that they had a social worker work with the Stamford Police Department to go out on calls. So people who were having maybe a mental health episode were not treated as criminals or treated like in a violent way. Nice. And it really made such a beautiful, profound difference, bringing families back together and really doing things with a completely different approach that I think the plan is that you will be seeing more of that in some of the towns around. So I think it's really nice.
Nice.
Yeah. That was a big thing in New York for a long period of time too. They had police officers responding to these domestic calls, but they didn't have the skill set to de-escalate those domestic conflicts. So now I think they're also realizing that there's so much going on as it relates to mental health that it's probably much better to rely on a mental health worker to de-escalate things, like
and it's also side effects from these mental health, like from these drugs, like a lot of these antidepressants and other, the side effects include, this sometimes aggressive behavior or violent behavior. So sometimes the medication is worse than, we see that a lot at the dispensary where patients who are, using things like an SSRI, like a Prozac, for example.
Right.
You feel worse than when you started. You feel like you can't get off of it. And these side effects, you just think, okay, is my disease getting worse or is this a side effect? And most people kind of assume their disease is getting worse.
Yeah. What was it like though for you as a pharmacist to kind of have that that moment that, oh, Santa Claus is not real? Like you train, you go to school for all the stuff, and then you see like, wait a minute,
there's no Easter bunny.
You're right. You're right. It was like the goggles came off. I think that when I was in high school, I was more just naturally kind of drawn to some agriculture actually, and natural medicine and natural healing. And I ended up going to pharmacy school and I thought I would do some type of combination. I got sidetracked, right? And just kind of got like a regular job. Like you were asking before, like, does everybody notice? Well, it took me a couple of years, to notice that this wasn't all good. My son had some like health conditions when he was a baby. I really just didn't, what the doctors were saying, and it wasn't anything too serious. It just didn't resonate as truth. They're saying these things to me. I'm like, that just doesn't make sense. And I remember I went to a holistic chiropractor actually in Norwalk, and he started talking about traditional Chinese medicine and their approach to this condition. And I was like, bingo, that resonates as truth. Thank you for having an explanation. Let's take care of this now. And so it was a combination, I almost feel like, of a mother's intuition and my pharmaceutical and science background, where, I really examined both. And I was able to trust my intuition, and then that frustration with just prescriptions that don't help. And then I was working actually in Bridgeport at a very busy pharmacy, and it was like the height of the opioid epidemic.
Oh, wow.
And oh my gosh, it was
I can imagine.
yeah, it was tough. I mean, you've got doctors in on it, got patients in on it. There's insurance fraud. You know, you're people coming in 5 minutes, 10:30 at night, looking to fill 240 Oxycontins. You know, sometimes you're intimidated. It was just this cycle that was so awful.
And that Oxycontin is serious. And during my stay in the hospital, I think there was one time I was rushed to the hospital because I had internal bleeding. My old kidneys had ruptured or something like that. And it was painful as hell for blood to be leaking out. I'll just use that term. When I got to the hospital, they gave me Oxycontin.
Mm-hmm.
Bro. Listen, I was Janelle tell you, I was laying in the bed. I was like, I want to fry pancakes and eat syrup and chicken wings. I was totally hallucinating. I was like, no, never again. Please don't give me that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that to say it's epidemic or it's pandemic or how it gets people addicted and hooked to it. I can see why, because it's almost like heroin, bro. It really nods you to hell off. And it shouldn't be, in my opinion, it shouldn't be in the medical field at all unless someone is really controlled using it. You know what I mean? Because it's that high of a dosage of cycle, whatever it is that's in there. It's a terrible thing, man.
Well, you're not supposed to have access to it that easy.
Huh?
You're not supposed to have access to it that easy, right? Isn't it considered what a control? Is a control one a control two substance?
It's a C2 substance, but it gets out there. It definitely got out there big time. So I think it was a combination of that, a couple of other things. And I was at that point, I would say I stopped using pharmaceuticals for myself and my family like over 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's all natural medicine. It's things like making sure you go to the chiropractor regularly and you're, taking the right supplements and getting sunlight. And really, again, it's about prevention, staying ahead of your symptoms. It's the same way. Mm-hmm. It's the same what you can do with cannabis, staying ahead of your anxiety, staying ahead of your pain, not waiting for your symptoms to get so bad and then medicating. So you can just have a higher quality of life. So again, that personal responsibility and your personal power. And Rob is like such a great example with his kidney of manifesting your own health, right? Mm-hmm. But you got to get into that mindset to be able to do that. And we're so distracted all the time. It's so hard to do that. So yes, I think that was a part of my process then of like, I was ready. Yeah, I was ready to get out of regular pharmacy.
Yeah. Have you incorporated meditation and mindfulness in that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely talk to patients about adding that to their regimens as well. So I think for myself, like, it's always been a practice of mine. I think it's more prayer and like the remembrance. What we do in Islam, it's called zikr. So it's more about that. And then when you kind of use terms that more people can understand that it's more inclusive, it can be like meditation, a gratitude practice, or mindfulness. Mm-hmm. And it's really about going inwards, right? To be able to heal there and getting more of yourself back into your present life. Mm-hmm. So you're not just kind of in the backseat of your life. You're present and you're aware and you can be more in charge.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm seeing holistic medicine making a surge into the against the other forms of medicine. Would I be right in that estimation? Because I think a lot of people are waking up. A lot of people are becoming more resilient, self-aware. People are meditating more. People are turning their lives around and doing things alternatively, and not so much running to the doctor for a pill and finding out what their terms are. I think people are really taking this approach, whether it's marijuana or any other thing, where you're eating different, you're vegan, or just changing your lifestyle. I think it's necessary. I think it's very necessary to unlearn some of these long traditional lessons, like eating 3 meals a day, bull crap that we've been taught to do. We need to unlearn that and know that, bro, it takes about 6 to 8 hours for your body to digest completely, and you've already thrown 3 meals in there. and you want to know why your sugar's off or your high blood pressure's off or whatever the case, or like yourself, Shannon, you get on your Peloton and your life is different. You switch up, you get a little healthy. But I really do believe that the holistic way of living, alternative way of living, is gonna battle with.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is, and I feel like how we were talking about, there's a personal power, there's also like a collective energy, right? So we're all learning and growing with one another. And I think also at times I feel like I'm in my own bubble where I kind of forget that rest of the, there's still a lot of people who, as you were saying before, there's a stigma. They don't believe in natural medicine. They just want to use. So I ask myself that too, is this growing really quickly, or is it just the people that I'm interacting with? And it's almost, like attracts like, the energy that you're putting out, Rob, you're gonna bring that back towards you, like-minded people.
Like attracts like, that's right.
Yeah, it does feel though that there are more people that are far more open to a holistic approach, and that people, I don't know, there's nothing really fascinating to say, or nothing to really explain it, other than I think people are just tired of being sick. And
yeah,
tired of doing the same thing all the time, bro.
People just feel like I've been relying on pharmaceuticals for so long and I haven't gotten the results. Like, I need to try something new.
Yeah, I feel like when you're sick, you're expected to look and act sick all the time. But then with holistic and alternative and cannabis as medicine, when you do look well, then people are like, "Oh, you're not even sick." What are you taking cannabis for? It's like, yo, you don't know what I went through. So I feel like that's a big thing, right? There's like, people are just trying to throw some cheese.
Yeah, I mean, it's even interesting that, when you have things like people have diabetes, or they have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, whatever it is, a lot of times the first fix from the doctor is to prescribe. Like, some people are very heavy on prescription, instead of, you think about like the natural remedies that you can actually do, like you just change your diet or exercise a little bit more. I mean, there are cases where some people are a lot further gone than others, but like, we do have accessibility to things other than pharmaceuticals.
But a lot, in the end though, still a lot of people won't do it.
So what do you think that's about? Because they feel like the pharmaceutical is the quick fix?
Yeah, I think you're not brought up like that. Life is tough. We're trying to get through the day, most of us, right? We're trying to pay the rent. We're trying to make ends meet. And our health is the furthest things from our minds. That if your doctor is going to say, hey, you can totally change your diet. And so you're not going to stop at McDonald's for breakfast. You're going to wake up half an hour early and make a smoothie and do this and that. But you got to get the kids to school or do a million other things. It's really out of reach. That I think just to be honest, there's still a lot of people who are going to be like, yeah, let me just get that pill.
Yeah,
so I don't, and I have some doctors in my family, and that's what they tell me. Most patients,
they want to take the pill. Give me the pill. I don't want to do no work.
I'll say probably, excuse me, I'll say probably over maybe like the last 20 years, they've begun to make more of a connection in terms of physical health. And the reason why I say that is because, it was the whole thing around like childhood obesity. So then you see exercise integrated more into school and stuff like that. But now step back and I think of it, if it, like in the last 20 or 25 years, we've got this level of awareness around physical health. Now you hear a lot of conversation about mental health, but how far are we off from people actually putting into practice something that we really deal with, and we're conscious in terms of mental health? Like, mental health is the buzzword, but I don't know if people actually begin to put in practice or begin to actually realize, have that level of self-awareness around what they need to do to care for their mental health. Like, the physical health is easier for people to address, because they look and, you look and people wear it like, okay, you may be overweight, or you have this going on, that going on. But mental health, I think, is for some people, it's hard to even detect that they have an issue with their own mental health.
Yeah, I think that you just think it's normal. And then also people, I think that we don't have a clear idea of what healing even looks like. So Rob joined my webinar last month, which was great. Thank you, Rob. And I talked about depression and inflammation. What I really try to do is that if we're all on this journey, right, a personal journey to some type of wellness where we want to feel better, but do we really know what that looks like? So people, like patients who've been in pain for 10 years and haven't done anything that they used to enjoy, and are incredibly depressed. What does healing look like for them? It's almost like I feel I actually enjoy reintroducing that concept to people.
Right.
And then with the cannabis, with the self-care practices, and then at least having a destination, some type of destination in mind of what it could feel like to feel good, to feel present and have wellness, and really putting that together so then you can medicate with that intention, right? So it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to be still. My mind's not going to race. And I'll even set things up for people. Okay, use this product and maybe make a cup of tea and put on music that you liked when you were in high school. And this could be like a woman in her 70s. It's like, oh, yeah, just take 20 minutes for yourself. And then there's that feeling of that, you can call it emotional regulation or just feeling like you're present and calm. As you become more familiar with that, because most of us aren't even familiar with that, you keep it with you, right? The goal is to keep it with you. So what I say, Rob, it's like how we on our prayer mat is so enjoyable and so pleasant and calm. You get off and then it's like, wow, back to like screaming at the kids or doing this or that.
Yeah. I want to stay down here.
Like this, and then it's so it's really about keeping that with us. That's the common.
Is all that part of the cannabinoid therapeutics?
Well, it is, because it helps with our mood. It helps with our anxiety. It helps with our even our feelings of confidence, shame, regret, guilt. It helps us with memory processing. So actually helping you hopefully store away bad memories so that you don't keep remembering them and they're not at the forefront of your mind. And just that what cannabis also helps with is separating that fear component with a memory. So then you're not as prone to falling into triggers.
Right.
Right? So it's actually relearning that you can have a trigger and not go back to feeling afraid.
Right.
So that's something else that cannabinoids do, which is why it's so remarkable for PTSD.
It's really unfortunate that our baseline isn't how we are when we're on the mat. When we get off, it's the that's
but look, I just planted a seed in your mind, right? I just introduced the concept to you. Now maybe in next time in a situation you can think back, just keep that with you. And it's hard. You got to find it, right? Sometimes maybe it's a visual, maybe it's like a blanket, so you just keep your blanket your spiritual blanket around you.
Like Linus with a blanket, huh?
Yeah, like Linus with a blanket.
Oh, well, we thank you for joining us this evening. Anything you want to close with?
No, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to you, Shannon. Thank you to you, Rob. You've been so great over the years. It's been so wonderful getting to know you and also seeing you shine in health like this. Alhamdulillah, God bless you. It's literally a miracle. It's amazing.
I want to thank you guys too, man. Compassionate Care, as well as the Botanist, Jen, Adrian. The list goes on. Carl, all you guys are great, man. And I love talking to you guys. You guys are very informative and very caring and compassionate, man. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, come check us out. The Botanist in Danbury. Also sometimes at the Botanist in Montville or Prime Wellness in South Windsor. And then I do have the monthly webinar, the Canna Convo, which definitely check that out, because that's when I'll go into specific disease states and put all of this stuff together for you, really organized. Thank you.
And we made sure we put on the screen also your Instagram if people want to follow you to get updates and more news about your work.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I've been available for consultations also, if anybody wants to do that.
I need a good sativa. We'll talk about that.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. We'll catch you on the next episode. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Peace.